March in Alberta, Canada. A month where the weather can vary drastically. It snows, then it melts. It snows, then it melts. But I know that the moisture is needed, and so as much as I long for wildflowers to sprout and the warmth of the sun to stick around, I know the snow means a beautiful spring. So until then, I accept the back and forth. I was out walking one day and noticed these lodgepole pine branches on the ground. I wondered to myself if I could make something out of them, so I decided to return to collect a few, seeing as how they were already knocked loose and I didn't need to harvest them. I really would like to make more practical items out of the natural materials around me, like tools, clothing, or baskets. It would be nice to not always have to purchase items when I need them, but to be able to make some myself. Today, however, I will create for the sake of creativity, a process that is just as valuable. We are creative beings, after all, who create for much more than just practicality. It's what makes us unique amongst the animal kingdom. I decided the most obvious creation to make was a wreath. I've never made one before, and it might be out of season to some people, but why not create a spring wreath? Perhaps with the hope that it will last long enough that I could add flowers to it someday. I find it's very easy to lose touch with my creativity, the tangible kind where I am using my hands to manipulate and form materials into something of my imagination. There is just so much to accomplish in a day, from work to chores to projects. I recently explained in a video that I thought of simple living as not getting so caught up in productivity that we forget to be and enjoy the simple moments of our lives. They often say you teach what you need to practice, and this is very true for myself. Productivity for me is in many ways tied to making money. There is very little need for me to create with my hands as far as being productive is concerned. It is really easy for me to prioritize productivity over creativity, the kind that isn't tied to a paycheck but is just for me. And I'm trying to have more of a balance between the two. I enjoyed creating for the sake of creating today. As I sat outside experiencing the change in temperatures, I thought of our early ancestors sitting on the ground making their own creations, often teaching each other or trying something for the very first time, and having to use their minds to problem solve. I purposely chose not to look up a tutorial, but instead wanted to just experience figuring it out for myself. Figuring it out for ourselves is an experience we are having less and less with the internet and AI. And while those can be helpful tools, I believe it's important to allow ourselves opportunities to problem solve on our own. I really love how my wreath turned out. It's not perfectly circular like the ones that you see in the stores, but I think that's what gives it beauty and character. And I love that I can see it from my bedroom window. Back in December, my husband and I thought we found a chaga mushroom on an aspen tree. Whether it was real chaga or fool's chaga, we learned that it is the birch trees that you want to harvest from. I was a little disappointed because I thought it would be really cool to harvest some, but then I saw some chaga mushroom tea for sale at one of the local stores. Even though I didn't get to harvest it myself, I am excited to try it for the first time. Chaga is rich in antioxidants and supports the immune system. It is these nutrient-dense wild plant foods that I'm hoping to consume more regularly. We've only been eating cultivated foods since the Neolithic Revolution over 10,000 years ago, which sounds like a long time ago, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. And I'd like to experience more of a wild diet. Later, I tried a chaga with a splash of whole milk, which is definitely not a wild food, but the two combined I would really highly recommend. It's reminiscent of a creamy caramel or vanilla drink, but with no sugar. It literally tastes so good, but there's no sugar, and I am such a sweet tooth, so if you have a sweet tooth, I really recommend trying chaga. Thank you very much for watching up until this point and taking an interest in what I'm getting up to during the months. I wanted to finish this video by reading an excerpt from this book, Being a Human: Adventures in 40,000 Years of Consciousness. I highly recommend this book if you're interested in just the history of humans, our evolution as a species. So yeah, it's basically about this man who tries to put himself in the shoes of someone living in the Upper Paleolithic, in the Neolithic, and then in the Enlightenment. And it's definitely eye-opening. Anyways, I wanted to read an excerpt from this book because there's a little bit of a short story in here that is very similar to the story that I talked about in my recent video on simplicity. I basically think it's the same story, just written in different words. So the story that I referenced in my simplicity video was called Fox and Bear. It was a children's story. And this story is, like I say, very much the same story, just written in different words. So I would like to share it with you today. Once upon a time, there lived a very rich man and woman. They had been given, the story is not clear by whom, a huge estate to live in. It stretched in every direction as far as the eye could see. It was so big that they had never been to the edge of it, and nor had anyone they knew. It was very beautiful. Wherever the man and the woman were, the views were amazing. There were woods, mountains, rivers, lakes, and valleys, and it was full of friendly animals. The rivers teemed with fish, the trees chattered with birds, and indeed the trees themselves chattered, but much more slowly. And there were great herds of deer and wild cattle and wild pigs. Although there were so many animals, the man and the woman knew the names of all of them. And if they called the deer by name, the deer would come and nuzzle their hands. There was plenty of food throughout the year, berries, flowers, mushrooms, and even, though they didn't taste as interesting as the other things, the heads of some big grass stalks that grew on the edge of the wood. And of course, there were animals. If a deer or a fish knew that its time had come, it would say to the man and the woman, "Eat me and enjoy me." And the man and the woman tearfully would thank the animal and accept the gift. The man and the woman were fit and healthy, for the climate and food were good, and wandering across the land kept them strong and supple. They moved from house to house, leaving the wind and the mice to clean up after them, and so every night they had a fresh lodging. But one day, no one knows quite how it happened, the man said to the woman, "I'm fed up of going out every day and having to collect food. And why should we have to wait until animals decide it's going to die before we have meat? Let's cut down some of the forest, build a wall around the part we've felled, build a house inside the walls, plant some of the big-headed grass inside the walls, and bring some of the animals inside too, to kill whenever we want." The woman thought that this was a very bad idea indeed, and said so, but the man wouldn't change his mind. So that's what they did. As they took their stone axes to the trees groaned, the birds were outraged, and the deer came to ask what was going on. But though the woman wept and heard the groans of the trees in her sleep, the man was unmoved. When he was lifting stones for the wall, he wrenched his back, which made him even more bad-tempered than ever. The wall was high. It meant that from their house, which got quickly very dirty, they couldn't see the mountains or the trees. All they could see was the wall. The animals didn't like the idea of living behind the wall and wouldn't come quietly. So the man snared them and dragged them in, and they screamed so loudly that even the man heard them in his dreams. They didn't give these animals names, they were just it. Because the animals couldn't graze where they wanted, the couple had to grow and gather fodder for them and clear away their dung. The couple themselves got bored of the grass heads. It was hard work grinding them, and the woman got a bad back herself from doing it, as well as a nasty fever that she caught from the deer and couldn't shake off. The man and the woman had lots of children, and their children had lots of children of their own. After a few years of this, the man said to his wife, "I wonder if we made a mistake. Shall we go back to the way we were?" The woman looked sad. She knew that her children and grandchildren had killed most of the animals in the forest outside the walls, and that they didn't know one mushroom from the other, and that the remaining animals now distrusted them and wouldn't come to them to die. "We can't," she said, "though I'd love to. But at least we can try to say sorry for what we've done." So they went out into the blackened, scrubby bits of forest, looking for something that would receive their apology. They couldn't find anything at all. And that, they decided, was a problem even greater than the grasshead diet, the deer fever, the knee-deep dung, the bad backs, and all the mouths that had to be fed. I just think that the story is very poignant and really speaks to just our history. And obviously no one intentionally planned for us to end up here. And so I think that it's important to make the most of the circumstances that we find ourselves in and try to think of how we can better our circumstances. I think that it speaks to the divorcement of our relationship with nature, that it's difficult to really go back to the way that things were. It's sad to me, and I think it's something that I'm grieving, honestly, right now, that we can't go back to this way of life. If you can relate, I would love to know. Anyways, thank you again so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.